Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Maialen. I am the coordinator of the Syndicate of the PIMENT D'ESPELETTE. My colleague is Pauline Champon. She's a control technician. We're going to give you a presentation of the PIMENT D'ESPELETTE. So I will just give you a history of the PIMENT d'Espelette. So as many may know, the origin of this product is in Mexico, and it started in a small village at the south of France. And just to give you an idea geographically, it's a small village in France. So the first traces of this chili pepper dates to 1650. So we see that this product was planted around the village of Espelette. So at the beginning of it's around the 1980 that the production of the PIMENT d'Espelette became official, and we created a cooperative of chili pepper producers. This first attempt to professionalize, in a way, the production of the pepper was a failure because there was no real framework in order to frame the production. So in the 1990s, the production was almost extinct of the Piment d'Espelette. But then about 30 producers wanted to maintain the Piment d'Espelette within that area around the village of Espelette in the south of France. And they started to think about how to protect their know-how, their product, and their production area. And with the help of INEO, the International Institute for the origin. It's the French Institute, and they created all the steps. They've defined all the steps to bring about this product, to define the product as well, and to call it Piment d'Espelette. So in 1993, the syndicate is created, the syndicate of the Piment d'Espelette producers, and so they had to officialize a structure, and so that we can call it Piment d'Espelette. 10 years later, approximately, for 10 years later, a producer managed to get this official specification, and we were then able to call it Piment d'Espelette. And so it's in 2012 that the normalization of the appellations started. So in 2012, the Piment d'Espelette is called AOP, so it's a DPO. So what is this PDO? Well, it's a product, first of all, which can be found in three versions. So first of all, you have the powder that contains approximately 99% of the production of Piment d'Espelette. Then you have the cord, as we call it. It is composed of a minimum of fresh products, and this is and then this is an interesting product which we like very much. And then you also have fresh chili, which is destined for transformation into other products, but mainly powder. So powder or other derived products. Other derived products can be, for instance, sauces with the fresh chili, jelly as well we create. And so this is what we make with the fresh chili. And then you can see it here on the map. Espelette is situated here at the southwest of France at the border with Spain. So the appellation area, it's a unique area. There are 10 small villages. It's a very small area. with respect to other, of course, PDO that we know in France or in Europe. So it's a unique mark of quality. This zone is very clearly defined because it has something specific. It's a microclimate, and this microclimate is very specific. It has very favorable a microclimate situation for the culture of this product. And then we have a specification. We have a design brief which defines the know-how for the production of the Piment d'Espelette. There are many specific rules. First of all the areas, all the terrains where you plant this chili pepper are the growing areas are registered with the INAO. Then you have only one variety. Then you have outdoor cultivation with a planting density limited. So you only have one. It's Goria, which means red in Basque, is the only variety that can grow Piment d'Espelette. So it's the only variety of this Piment d'Espelette. It's an outdoor cultivation with a planting density, which is delimited in the specification, in the design brief. And so then the harvesting is only made by hand. The irrigation is very well regulated. So there is an obligation to irrigate 1 month after planting, and then it is forbidden. And the use of pesticide is strictly regulated as well. And when it comes to the production of the Piment d'Espelette powder, there are also some specificities. It's an ancient know-how. First of all, there's a maturation of the chili pepper. There's a ventilation, natural ventilation. So we need approximately 15 days for the maturity. After 15 days, the chili pepper is cleaned. We remove the top, and then it goes into an oven, and it's a sort of a tobacco drying device. And then we dry it. The temperatures, each producer has his own temperatures. And once that step is over, the powder, which has been ground, is ready to be used. And then we have one common mark. It's the logo. So Piment d'Espelette is a common logo for all of them. You can see here on this graphic that we have a group of producers that is quite dynamic. It's a dynamic community. So the number of plants increases constantly. And then last year, we counted approximately 5.1 million plants on 216 on the interpreter did not see how many hectares. So we had approximately 30 in 2000, and now 216 producers in 2021, 2022. And now concerning the production of the powder is a little bit like this, up and down, because we are in a open field production. We of course depend on the climate. And so sometimes, like in 2018, we had a drought, and because of that, with our production was clearly diminished because of the drought with respect to the previous years. But last year was a very good year from the climate point of view, and we have produced 277 tons of Piment d'Espelette in powder. Now, when it comes to the human scale community, it's quite young. The producers are quite young. They decided a lot of young producers want to work with Piment d'Espelette. So it's a good sign, because in France, we see a decline of the agricultural installations. So we are very happy that people are interested in the Piment d'Espelette. So there's always 10 to 20 new producers who would like to produce Piment d'Espelette, this chili pepper that we like so much. And when it comes to the exploitation, it's 65% of producers who plant approximately 20,000 plants of Espelette chili pepper. And what is interesting and what was the policy of our syndicate is that we encourage producers to go from the grain to the powder and to commercialize their production. So approximately 77% of our producers transform and sell their own product. There's no huge cooperative, there's no intermediary, there's no huge, we don't have a huge buyer for the Piment d'Espelette. It's really a human scale community, and the Piment d'Espelette allows to maintain this agricultural area, and we can have a real economy when it comes to the growing of the Piment d'Espelette. So how are we organized when it comes to the syndicat? So we were recognized as the only organization of defense and management of Espelette chili pepper. We have producers, processors, and packagers, and they elect a syndicate, which a direction, a board of directors, and there are 11 producers in this board of directors, and the management, the engineers, and other, we're 6 employees, and we work for the syndicate. So I am the coordinator. We have an engineer who is an engineer in experiments, one cultural technician, and he is the producers. Pauline next to me, she is in charge of control and protection. And then we have a administrative assistant, and we also opened a museum for the chili pepper of Espelette, Piment d'Espelette, and there's a person who also works and manages this museum. We have 3 major missions within our syndicat. The first is the defense and the management of our PDO. We have also the promotion and communication, and we also have the improvement, the Piment d'Espelette quality. We want to improve the quality. Of course, the promotion, communication of the PDO, that's very important because we really want to produce generally the Piment d'Espelette. We are not promoting one particular producer. And of course, all our producers are taken care of so that we have a better quality Piment d'Espelette, or good quality Piment d'Espelette. I'm going to give the floor to Pauline, who will explain to you everything that was put in place within the syndicate for the management and the defense of our PDO. So when it comes to the work that we do on the quality, we work at every level. We are very much interested in the quality of the product. We want to be very specific. We want to have a specific description. Everything is drafted, written down, and if it's written down, it has to be carried out by operators. So the design brief is very, very important. The producers who are engaged to guarantee the Piment d'Espelette also want to promote the quality. They have to respect an authorization procedure, which is very specific for the Piment d'Espelette. They have to respect the specification production. And at every stage of the production, they have to guarantee the traceability. They have to take part in meetings when it comes to quality, technical quality, and quality training. So we give them also the training, and they also have to guarantee the good image of the Piment d'Espelette. So they cannot just do whatever they want. So what I just told you is what producers do. Then we have 2 control levels, internal, which comes from the Syndicat du Piment, and external. So we have a external control and internal control. The external control, well, we have Certitude, that's who we are known in France for that. And those 2 levels of control, external and internal, they work together. And in the end, we can control 100% of growing areas, and everybody is controlled. So it's really very good because all the growing areas are controlled. We can verify all plots. We apply sanctions. We help syndicate in cases of fraud. And it's very important that the external controller make sure that the producers are really abiding by the specification. We have to know that the process is respected. So then we will validate the process if everything is, and if there's something that is not well done, not done correctly, we will give fines to them, to producers. We can give warnings, or when they are not, when there are non-conformities, well, then we we stopped them from producing. We do not allow them to do it. So if the agriculture, the producer can be also kicked out if he is not in conformity with our process. So this is a very heavy sanction, and this is why the producers are very much encouraged to respect the specifications. The internal control is made by the syndicat, by moi-même, but also by a uh, production commission, and so we want to help the producers in order to respect the specifications. And our main mission is also to go directly on the ground to see how are what's going on on the ground, the growing areas, and also to go and see the various ateliers from which the PIMENT D'ESPELETTE transits. Also, of course, by making sure that they are abiding by the specifications. But the soil has to be identified correctly. It all has to be well done. So it's the competent authority that goes to check if the growing areas correspond to the criteria of the appellation. And we also work very much with INAO on frauds, and we will come back to that. I'm sorry, I was a bit fast, says the speaker. And there's also the procedure and regulations. We have the organoleptic control, and so that's also very important. We want to check if the products that are produced by the producers correspond to the specifications. So we have the powder, the fresh, and the quartz. So we will focus on powder because that is the product that is the most produced by our producers. And it's very important to know that before we put on the market the powder, every powder is controlled. We lost the PowerPoint. I don't know if you can still see it. I'm going to try to bring it back. Okay. All right. We found it. So everything is controlled by a jury, and the jury is composed by producers, experts, and amateurs of the product, and everybody followed training in order to be in order to be tasters. Everything is very well defined. They are trained to taste the chili pepper to see if it's not to say I like it or I don't like it, but it's the color that is important. So as you can see, everything that we see. So we first look at the size of the particles. So the color goes from orange to dark brown. Then you have the aroma to the nose. So the main aroma of the chili pepper is the aroma of hay, dried hay, aroma of fruit, ripe tomatoes and red peppers, and the toasting, the roasting like a toast. That's also a grilling aroma. And then there's the intensity. So we have to smell. If we don't smell it correctly, it means that the product has not matured enough and they did not follow the strict specifications. And then we also have to taste it. If we feel a little bit of bitterness or a bit of sweet, so it's like not too bitter, not too sweet. And we also have to see, is there a heat intensity? So the particularity of this chili pepper, of this pellet, is that the pepper remains there, but it is not too intense. The intensity is medium. We are in between 4 and 5 points. So it is a very pleasant chili pepper, and all our producers have to tell us if it's too intense, not intense enough, and if it respects the specifications. And the risk that we can have is that everything, of course, is very controlled. But if an operator has 3 growing areas that do not correspond, his or her production will be suspended up until they become conform to the specialization. This is the mission when it comes to the control. Now, when it comes to the protection of our product, we realized that the piment d'Espelette is an ingredient that is very much used in various recipes. So it is traditionally used for the ham or foie gras because necessarily there is a lot of piment d'Espelette in it. Maybe you have seen it with foie gras. For instance, if you get foie gras for the Southwest, the foie gras contains as well piment d'Espelette, and it can be also introduced in various other products, in chocolate, which we see today, chips, for instance, already made meals, ready cooked meals, everything that's also pâté and all that local, and also in dishes like pasta and other. So it's indispensable for the fabric of the Basque agri-food. We realize that it is a quality, it has a very strong, it's a quality product and it has a very strong marketing aspect to it. In order to identify our products, so we have a specific logo, which is only reserved to the product. So the powder, the fresh, and the cord, the products that we presented earlier, the logo does not appear. The logo is only for the ready-made product. So this is to identify this from other products which use piment d'Espelette, but as an ingredient. So they cannot put the logo. So all the products. So one product that benefits from this logo, in order to be commercialized, they have to absolutely be identified through the logo. And you can see the little jars of Piment d'Espelette. You can see that they are identified with this specific logo. And we have also protected Piment d'Espelette. It is protected at every level, and we do not hesitate to intervene if something is not done correctly. And so all these stages allows us to understand that we are dealing with Piment d'Espelette and not a substitute. We have very strict rules to use a name Piment d'Espelette and the mark. As Ms. Francesca Alampi mentioned at the beginning of the interventions, we are we are abiding by the European directive. Um, so European directives are very important for us, and we just want to make sure that the Piment d'Espelette may be the only product of that type in the preparation, not that there's paprika or any other spices, something that could be close to the Piment d'Espelette, so we have to make sure of that. And the Piment d'Espelette has to be also either present as a powder or in a cord, but it has to be, the amount has to be sufficiently important so that it gives that special taste to the product. So very often we are called to try the product to see if that really corresponds to our specifications. We have also drafted recommendations. And so these recommendations are also enriched by minimum percentages that have been validated by the competent French authorities. So there have to be minimum percentages in the products. So what you see to the left of your screen, you have it in the English version, and these are all the obligations that have to be respected in order to use the Piment d'Espelette. It has to be so Piment d'Espelette PDO. It has to be the only product for that preparation. One small particularity is that if the pepper is also listed as an ingredient, we will ask so that the quantity of pepper be inferior to the Piment d'Espelette so that it does not drown the taste. And in the list of ingredients, the percentage of the Piment d'Espelette it has to be mentioned. And we also insist on the fact that the AOP product is incorporated in sufficient quantities as to confer an essential characteristic on the dish and the foodstuff in question. So failing which it shall be considered an abusive use of the name. So everything is very detailed. The recommendations are there. The recommended percentages are there. So we say, for instance, 0.2% on the Basque chicken. It's a sort of a tomato sauce with piment d'Espelette, where you have to put at least 0.1%. And then Ashwa, what is it? It's a product. It's a typical Basque product. It's veal and also with piment d'Espelette. You need 0.1%. Everything that has to do with pork pate and also that's 0.7%. And also the presence of piment d'Espelette is detected in chocolate. And so if you use it in chocolate, you have to put 0.5%. So those are our recommendations for the use of piment d'Espelette. And underneath, you also see that everything has to be clearly respected, but you cannot put piment d'Espelette AOP in order not to confuse the consumer. So you can't put that on the label. And we have to say that the logo can only be used for products that inaudible that so it is very important that the we can only put the logo when it's really Piment d'Espelette. So if there's fraud, we work with the INAO services and the fraud services from France. So we will contact the company that is not in conformity, and we will then give them a warning and ask them to become in conformity. So in most cases, when you have cases like this, after the note, after the authorities went to see them, so most often the people who are not in conformity, they most often correct their ways, but if they are not doing it correctly, we do not hesitate to also bring them before courts. So this note is sent largely, and if people are interested in derived products, well, they come to contact us first to see what they can do in order to benefit from the Piment d'Espelette, but not use, of course, Piment d'Espelette PDO. So we don't want to, encourage fraud, but we see it less and less now. And so just to add to Pauline's presentation, like Francesca mentioned, the French regulation, in French regulation, in French legislation, there is no rule that says or stipulates a minimum percentage. There's no a minimum percentage for PDOs. So when it comes to us, the sufficient quantity is not sufficient. In some cases, it is not sufficient. It's too subjective for some products. The sufficient quantity, the sufficient amount in order to call a product piment d'Espelette. So we don't have that. What we would like as a syndicat is to have a law, a legislation, like, for instance, for, unfortunately, it's inaudible. The sound is a bit bad. The interpreter did not hear. So, and a minimum percentage for products with truffles. So we would like for the Piment d'Espelette, we would like to be able to have the same level of requirement, the same level, regulation level. But we are a very small production. We are a very small, we're small producers, so we do not have legal means. We do not have human means and financial means to go to request a law or legislation that would enable us to better protect and to make sure that the percentages are enshrined in law. So we are calling on our European friends to maybe request, therefore, of our European friends to see that to say that it is important to put minimum percentages for products that are PDO, so it would enable us to be stronger, legally speaking, faced by some industrials who unfortunately do not follow down to the letter our recommendations. Our recommendations are only recommendations, and legally they are not binding. That's all. So as Pauline was saying, for the majority of cases, we are really trying to educate industrials, and we want to make sure that they accept to maintain the sufficient amounts for us in order to be to call something Piment d'Espelette. Thank you very much. We are at your disposal. If you wish to put any questions for us, we would be happy to answer. Thank you very much.